And we are live. Thank you for tuning in to the Max Van Auken Podcast. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a great one. So we have the UFC kind of releasing 3 huge fights. Of course, fight cards, but 3 huge fights. I'm looking at it here. And then we also have the Dallas Mavericks versus the Houston Rockets game I did not get to talk about. So I had Andrew Combo Salop from Combo's Court. Always a great episode, right? I had him on, and we discussed the Lakers-Clippers. We discussed the Utah Jazz Pelicans, what Zion Williamson, why isn't he playing enough minutes? So we kind of touched on that, and then we kind of gave our predictions for the Mavericks-Rockets game, but didn't really get to dive too much into it because the game didn't happen. So now that the game has happened, I wanted to share my thoughts. I've said since, and you can check me out on Twitter, Instagram. Yes, I sprained my wrist in case you're watching this video. I said this months ago. And like I said, check out my Twitter. I put it on my Instagram story. I document it. And I said the Houston Rockets are built to upset the Clippers more than the Lakers. I said the Houston Rockets, just because you look at their size, you look at their weapons, they have a better opportunity to upset the Los Angeles Clippers than they do the Los Angeles Lakers. Am I saying it's going to happen? That's not what I'm saying. I understand why the Clippers are favored. I get it. I'm still rolling with the Lakers. But me personally, if you look at the roster, you look at the style of play, and you look at what both teams are good at, I think the Houston Rockets are certainly built to upset the Clippers. And that showed me against the Dallas Mavericks. That's what it showed me. And I still believe that. I think they can. And I think the Houston Rockets certainly can. The Lakers have too much size for the Rockets. Too much size. You have JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma's big. The biggest guy on the Houston Rockets team is like PJ Tucker's their main guy. Like, you look at their roster, I mean, if you just look at the box score alone, you're looking at Covington, Harden, Westbrook, Tucker, House, Rivers, McLemore, Green. These aren't big guys at all. The Clippers don't have a lot of size. They have a lot of wing scoring threats, defensive stoppers. The Morris, Kawhi, Paul George, obviously got Lou Will, Pat Bev, Reggie Jackson. Like, you have a bunch of wing guys. The Clippers are built to beat the Lakers. The Lakers are built to beat the Rockets, and I think the Rockets are built to withstand the Clippers. So if I were to tell you right now, I've said this months ago, and I'm going to say it again, I will not be shocked if the Clippers lose to the Houston Rockets, because the Houston Rockets are built to withstand the Clippers. They're built to match up with them. The Clippers are built to kind of slow down LeBron, but I think their lack of size is why I'm still rolling with the Lakers. I think the Lakers are too big for the Rockets, but the Rockets ultimately, I think, could shock the Los Angeles Clippers. And I don't think I'm crazy. But the thing I wanted to touch on is not just who won the game or validate some predictions I had a couple months ago, but what I wanted to touch on is effort. Because we look at James Harden, he scores 49 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, goes 14 for 20, played 43 minutes. And then Russell Westbrook, 31, 11, and 8. He went 13 for 30, though. That's not too good. I'm critical of both. I'm really critical on Russell Westbrook, and that's one thing people push back on me about, is I'm not a fan of Russell Westbrook's style of play. I am, as far as an entertainment perspective, I don't think you can win a championship the way he plays. So I don't really think you can win a championship the way James Harden plays. So I've been critical of both, more of Russell Westbrook. But this episode, I wanted to give effort to both of them. Not effort, a credit to both of them. Because their effort is unreal. And you see this, and I think we take it for granted. So we see the stat line. Like I said, I just read James Harden's stat line. I just read Russell Westbrook's stat line. And it's like, oh, yep, they just had another great game. And they could be the best scoring duo of all time. Not the best duo, but best scoring duo when you look at the records and the numbers. And I think we're starting to take it for granted. I'm not saying they're going to win a championship. That's not what this podcast is about. It's not what I'm talking about. But as far as effort, consistently showing up in producing and giving it their all is such an underrated quality that a lot of players and a lot of people don't have in life. You have a job, you have an occupation, a career. Showing up every single day to work and giving it your all is a hard thing to do. You may show up, but everyone has bad days. Everyone has days they may not feel like going in or feel like maybe they didn't put their best foot forward. Every single night, they're giving it all gas, no brakes, 110% effort, and it is an incredible thing to see. I've said availability is the most underrated ability. I mean, I love Andrew Luck. And it's not his reason why he wasn't available, but he got beat up a lot. They criticized Carson Wentz for this. A lot of players, Joel Embiid, you have incredible talents, but they're not always available. And that's why I've said, and Rob actually is the one that told me this, availability is the most underrated ability. I'm going to take a step further, and I'm going to say effort is also in there. Because there's a lot of talented guys who just don't show up some nights because they don't show up. Sometimes they don't have that dog. These guys have dog. They show up every single night. That's such an underrated thing. And like I said, I don't think the Rockets win the championship. I think they could upset the Clippers, but I don't think they win the championship. I'm still rolling with the Lakers. But what I'm saying is the effort. Every single night to do what they're doing. And like I said, I'm critical of them. I've been critical of both, mainly Russell Westbrook. But just to show up the way they do constantly is incredible. And they did it again against the Dallas Mavericks. Like I said, James Harden 49, 9, and 8. Russell Westbrook 31, 11, and 8. To be able to do that, play 43, 44 minutes is unreal. Is it sustainable? I'm not sure, but I know every single game they're going to give it their all. And that's something that the Houston Rockets are extremely lucky to have. And again, I don't think their style of play wins a championship, but the effort is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. We could talk about the step back. We could talk about James Harden's ability to draw fouls. We could talk about his scoring ability. But the fact that he shows up every single night and produces stuff like this, that's incredible effort and dedication. And that's something that is just unreal to watch. Absolutely unreal. And I've said this. So I had my rap comparisons to NBA players. This is off the dome. I don't have it written in front of me. I had Trae Young as Roddy Ricch. I had Drake and Curry. I had LeBron and Lil Wayne. Meek Mill and Russell Westbrook, because all gas, no breaks, nonstop. James Harden, Young Thug, for their unique ability, their flow. We've never seen anyone play like James Harden. We've never seen anyone rap like Young Thug. He transcended the game. J. Cole and Kevin Durant. Kendrick Lamar and Kawhi Leonard. Travis Scott and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm missing some. Again, this is all off the top of my head. Luka Doncic and DaBaby. Lil Baby and Zion. Ja Morant and Gunna. Those were the main ones. I may be missing a few here and there. But my point is, Meek Mill is Russell Westbrook. He gets on a track. You know he's passionate about what he's rapping about. You know Russell Westbrook's passionate about the game. And it's just all gas, no breaks. Again, we can be critical of both of them. But you can never, ever, ever question their passion and the flow and just the ability to speak from the heart and play from the heart. And that's something Russell Westbrook shows. James Harden, never seen a scorer like him. Again, you may not like his style. You may not like how he's ball dominant or the step back or how he draws fouls, but he's changing the game. Young Thug changed the game. Young Thug's flow, his level changes, his voice, what he's meant for the rap industry, changed the game. That's James Harden. And when I look at this box score, I look at this game, it's like, oh, that's Meek Mill and Young Thug. That's their soundtrack right there. That's their new release. Dallas Mavericks. 49, 9, and 8. 31, 11, and 8. Meek Mill, all gas, no breaks. Young Thug's going to show you a flow you haven't seen. Always a great feature. That's them. That's Meek Mill and Young Thug on the same team. And that's their new song they just released against the Dallas Mavericks. Unreal. And the effort is unreal. And that's what I absolutely love about them. Like I said, I've been critical of both. But their effort is just so unreal to consistently always put your best foot forward and play 100% is something that's so underrated. And they both have that. Now, I've said I think they can upset the Clippers. I really still am rolling with the Lakers. I think this Houston Rockets team, their kryptonite, is the same thing that's been their kryptonite for a while. Yes, their system works. Yeah, it's very fluid when you're just running in transition, hitting threes and layups. But Mike D'Antoni will not make that adjustment. He will not make those key adjustments to win a championship. I think he's created a system that fits, elevates his players, but as a coach, it's your responsibility to make certain adjustments on the fly during the game. I think he fails to do that. I don't think he pays attention to detail. That's one thing how we describe Bill Belichick. Preparation, intelligence, adjusting, adapting. Mike D'Antoni does not do those things. He's created a system. That system works, but I think he fails on the other categories, adjusting and adapting. I don't think he does that. So when you look at these close games, I think that was more of Dallas Mavericks' loss than it was Houston Rockets' win, because the Dallas Mavericks are young. Luka Doncic, obviously incredible. Kristaps Porzingis, that was one of the most silent 36-point games I've ever seen. Obviously, Tim Hardaway Jr., Seth Curry, they have a really young and talented roster. But the key word is young. So when you look at these late game scenarios, and I love Rick Carlisle as a coach, they have such a bright future, but you could just tell right now is not their time. And when it came to late game situations, I think their youth showed. And you're playing against veterans like the Houston Rockets, who obviously are veterans. They've been there, done that. And I think it was more of Dallas Mavericks' inexperience more than it was like Mike D'Antoni's coaching to a victory. It was just more of Russell Westbrook and James Harden's excellence. But I don't think D'Antoni, and if you learn from your past in order to learn about your future, right? We look at the past. There are games against the Golden State Warriors. There are games, really any situation that they needed adjustments, they fail to make those because they're so set in their ways on what works. And that's ultimately what's going to cost them. So when I say they can challenge the Clippers, it's not because I have faith in D'Antoni's coaching. I just have faith in the way they play and the roster that they have. But in order for them to take that next step, because someone asked me on Instagram, I don't understand what they need to take that next step. It seems like they're always right there but never do it. And I said it's just those adjustments. And their style of play, I don't think wins a championship. It reminds me of Michael Jordan. When he's dropping 36, 40 points a game, Phil Jackson pulls him aside and says, hey, if you want to win, you need to get your teammates involved. You need to trust your teammates. And then you started to see him passing more. Obviously, the triangle was implemented, where it wasn't just all about Michael Jordan scoring. It was about getting the whole team involved. There's different weapons, more scenarios. Every single time they caught it in a triangle position, there's 33 different scenarios. So that took pressure off Michael Jordan. It was harder to prepare for other teams. With the Houston Rockets, we know what to prepare for. We know what's going to happen. So they're predictable. And predictable is the worst thing you can be in sports. Now, sometimes you can be predictable, but you just can't stop it. And that's often what we see and why they succeed. It's just because they're so unbelievable. Russell Westbrook and James Harden, you may know what they're going to do. You can't stop it. Giannis, you know what you're going to do. You can't stop it. But when you start to face championship-level teams, you have to be able to make adjustments. They don't do that. And I don't think the style of play will do that. So it's what separates a champion from an amazing team from a championship team. It's the details. It's the little things. I interviewed Coach Carter's head coach, Coach Brink, from high school. DTLT, do the little things. It truly matters. It truly matters. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm pleased with all the games. Every game's gone very close, besides, I think, what was it, OKC and Utah. OKC is shocking me all the time. But other than that, all these games have been very close, very competitive, very intense. The NBA pulled it off. So overall, the NBA is just doing a tremendous job with the production, with the players, everything. Absolutely everything. But I want to transition. Now, this is for my UFC guys, my UFC fans. We have 3 huge fights. I'm looking at the dates right now. We have August 15th, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 3. We have Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje set for October 24th. And I know they announced the Israel Adesanya versus Costa fight. I'm looking where the date is going to be, but the date's not popping up. Maybe they haven't given that one a date yet. Yeah, I think that's what it is. They haven't given it a date yet. Yeah, they haven't given that a date. Either way, those 3 fights are the biggest fights coming up in the UFC. Huge. So if you're a UFC fan, if you're getting into the UFC, now's the time. And I said it, and this was before the pandemic, I said this is going to be the biggest year in UFC history. 2020, you have all the stars back. At the time, Conor wasn't retired. You have Amanda Nunes, Israel Adesanya, John Jones, DC, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Tony Ferguson, Max Holloway. You just have all your stars. That's what you need. It's a star-driven business. And 2020, not only did the pandemic happen, they were the only sport that was really on at the time. So UFC is getting tons of exposure. These 3 fights are huge, huge, because we're looking at Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, the trilogy. And I believe this is both their last fight. Now, Daniel Cormier's went on the record, and he's confirmed this is my last fight, right here. But I think this is Stipe Miocic's last fight as well. And I think that because he's a part-time firefighter as well as a professional UFC fighter, which is absolutely hats off to the guy. I don't know how he does it. I've never heard of anything like that. He does it. I think this is his last fight too, because Ngannou's coming in at guns blazing. Stipe's already beat him. I feel like it's like nothing to gain, everything to lose fighting him again. You've already beat him. Odds are he probably clips you if you fight him again. You beat Daniel Cormier, you're beating an all-time great, solidifying yourself as the most title defenses in UFC history in the heavyweight division, and you're ending it with beating Daniel Cormier in a classic trilogy match. That's a great way to go out. And I think he's had his disputes or his disagreements with the UFC. He's never really had the backing as far as from a promotional standpoint, not because the UFC dislikes him, but he's not really an outgoing, flamboyant personality that talks trash. He's a very humble guy. Like I said, he's a firefighter while he fights. And I think this lifestyle necessarily isn't him. I think he's obviously a fighter. He's one of the best in the world, arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. But I think he would be happy to leave the sport on top after beating Daniel Cormier. That wouldn't shock me. Daniel Cormier, we know this is his last fight. So that alone is worth watching and tuning into, because this could be both of their last fights. But from a stylistic matchup, we've seen DC knock him out early. So then he had the confidence going into the second fight. He wanted to stand and bang. And we saw, again, adapting. It's crucial in sports. Stipe losing the early rounds in the second match, the rematch. But then he starts to make an adjustment, and he attacks Daniel Cormier's body, wears him out, and now he beats Daniel Cormier via TKO. So now this third match, both of them have been knocked out. What is the approach? I think Daniel Cormier goes back to his roots. He's an Olympic wrestler. I think he wrestles. Stipe's no slouch with wrestling. I'm going to give the edge to Daniel Cormier, but he's no slouch. So I think that approach alone is just interesting. On top of what's on the line, it's a must-watch fight. I think Daniel Cormier goes to his wrestling roots. Does it work? I don't know. I'm leaning towards DC. I haven't given my official prediction yet, but as of right now, I'm leaning towards DC. So then we go to Justin Gaethje versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. This is... So when Tony Ferguson got booked to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov, I said Tony Ferguson's going to win. And I just think it was a stylistic... Even though Khabib would take him down, ground and pound, do what Khabib does, the way Tony Ferguson matched up with him, being very good with scrambles, doesn't get tired, can take a beating, mentally just stronger than anybody. I thought it was a weird challenge for Khabib that he hasn't seen. But then Justin Gaethje filled in and fought Tony, and I said stylistically, I think Justin Gaethje shocks the world even on short notice. And he did. So styles make fights. There could be a better fighter, but because their style doesn't necessarily match up or work well with another one, that could change everything. We're looking at that now with Justin Gaethje and Khabib. I think Justin Gaethje presents the most issues Khabib's ever faced. Because you're looking at someone who has a tremendous wrestling background. But people don't know that about Justin Gaethje because he doesn't utilize it in his fights. He likes to stand and bang. Justin Gaethje is a phenomenal wrestler. And then you add that with his incredible power. You see this new element he's adding to his game with his patience and fighting more calculated and articulate instead of just going and brawling. So you add that combination with insane power, good wrestling, a guy who has conditioning, and a guy who loves to fight. That's key right there. There's a lot of fighters who don't really love to fight. I feel like Justin Gaethje would do this for free. So if you take a guy who loves to fight, a guy that wants to fight Khabib, great chin, great wrestling, knockout power in both hands. Those shots that he hit Tony Ferguson with are knocking out Khabib. The only person that could take that in the world is Tony Ferguson, and we don't even know how he did it. Khabib's not taking those type of shots. Now, I don't have to sit here and tell you how good Khabib is. The guy is undefeated, 28, 29-0. We know what he's going to go in there and do. He's going to go in and try to take Justin Gaethje down and maul him, which very well could happen. So I'm not bashing Khabib. I just like the way Justin matches up with Khabib. Again, he's the underdog. He should be. I just think he catches him. And I think he shocks the world. And I think Justin Gaethje beats Khabib, calls out Conor McGregor, and I think it's a no-brainer for Conor. Comes out of retirement, let me get my belt back, and that may be his last fight and he retires. Either way, stylistically, I'm going to Justin Gaethje. Last but not least, we have Israel Adesanya and we have Acosta. Now this, to me, everyone saw Acosta's fight with Romero and just assumes that he's going to be able to bully Israel Adesanya the way he beat Romero, because look at Romero's strength and his power. If he could do that to him, he's going to do it to Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya is a K1 striker. I think he's at over 60, 70 fights. he's a counter striker. It's almost like Anderson Silva. He's a counter striker. When you force the counter striker to go forward, you get very, not boring, but they're chess matches that are boring to the average consumer. So Romero didn't want to charge in on Israel Adesanya because he knows he's a counter striker. So now you got kind of a stalemate going on. Costa's not going to do that. Costa's going to push forward like he did at Romero. And I think that fits more into Israel Adesanya's game. He's used to being pushed and pressed. He's a counter striker. It's all about angles, movement, footwork. He'll have that opportunity now with Costa. And I'm going with Israel Adesanya. I'm going to put that pick out there early. Going Justin Gaethje, Adesanya, the Stipe, Daniel Cormier match, not too certain yet. I'm leaning towards DC. But Israel Adesanya, I think, is going to KO Costa. I do. And I don't know if it's, I think it'd probably be like a second, third round, because he's a very patient guy. But I think because, again, styles make fights, that press going forward, he's never fought a counter striker like Israel Adesanya. I guarantee you Adesanya's found people that like to press him. So this is familiar territory for Adesanya, and that's why I'm betting my money on him. I appreciate you guys. There's going to be more and more of these coming out every single month since I've started this podcast. It's been more and more downloads. I check it towards the end of the month, like what you guys like listening to. Obviously, talk about that a little bit more. Every single month, there's more and more downloads. So this is me saying thank you. I'm appreciative for it. And August, we're about to make another record-breaking month. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Peace.